Welcome to Below the Forest Floor, the 2022 Valentine's Day special. My name is Nancy, and I am here with my husband, / co-host, / Valentine, Ryan.
Hello.
Today is the day of corporate manipulated love, Valentine's Day. So Ryan and I thought it would be fun to discuss the horrors of Cupid and Cherubs. So growing up, I had never really understood the significance of what a flying baby with weapons had to do with love. Then, when I was told the story by educators stating that Cupid was a being that would shoot arrows at people to make them fall in love with each other, I was even more confused. Like, if they didn't already like each other in the first place, why would he do that? Or why were you not given a choice and forced to love someone you may have not even had interest in the first place? Needless to say, my teachers did not care to explain more, nor did they try to answer my questions. So I just grew up thinking it was just some sort of weird mascot for a made-up holiday, which, let's be honest, it's kind of technically is. But later, as I, grew older and learned a bit more, I found out that Cupid was a literal god from Roman mythology, and apparently his counterpart in Greek mythology is Eros. I also found out that Cupid is not as innocent as the media makes him out to be, and that's what we'll be exploring today, the creepy, scary, and evil side of Cupid and Cherubs. So what's your knowledge of Cupid, Cherubs, whatever has to do with any of this, Ryan?
Not so much on the, Valentine's Day. I only know of the same thing that you had basically already said there. I had the same kind of questions because in my mythology class in high school, learning a little bit about, I think it was Eros was the one that we were learning about, but then finding out later on about the Cupid side of it as well. It was interesting. I wanted to learn more about it, but then never really got a chance to, except for the video game Smite, but that was pretty much it. And they basically went for the flying baby one also, so yeah.
So a bit of backstory on the Roman god Cupid, because we love our origin stories here on Below the Forest Floor. He was the son of Mercury, messenger of the gods, but some people say his father was Mars, the god of war, but who knows, because mythology is all over the place sometimes, but most stories say Mercury, messenger of the gods, was his father, and that Venus, the goddess of love, was his mom. But to find out anything about Cupid, we have to go back and visit his Greek counterpart, Eros. I know mythology is a spiderweb, bear with me. So one of the stories states that Venus, Aphrodite in Greek mythos, became extremely jealous and filled with rage when she heard of a young princess named Psyche that was said to have a beauty so radiant it rivaled the goddess. She was so beautiful, in fact, that no one wanted to marry her so that all could admire her grace, and people stopped going to visit Aphrodite's temples in place of go and look at this young woman. And with nobody wanting to marry her, Psyche got extremely lonely. In a fit of rage, Aphrodite demanded that her son Eros force Psyche to fall in love with a monstrous beast, other people say just like a really ugly person. And when Eros arrived at her home to do so in the middle of the night, he was stunned by her beauty, completely taken aback. There in the darkness, he offered her his hand in marriage, with the ability to live in a large palace with him under one condition. She could not see his face, and she could not see her sisters. She had to stay there forever. Eventually, Psyche's sisters convinced her to try to sneak a peek at Eros. She could hear them from the palace down on Earth. I don't know, it was like some weird explanation.
Yeah, it's one of the it's a godly thing for mythos.
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't make any sense to me at that point, but okay, she heard them. And they're just so loud. And they wanted to know if she was dating a monster or something worse. So when she decided to sneak into the room in the middle of the night, and when she did so, she lit an oil lamp over him to see in the darkness what he looked like, and some of the oil from the lamp actually spilled onto him, and it scared him awake. He fled back home to his mother, feeling betrayed, which sounds a little silly. Aphrodite said to Psyche that she could escape punishment if she could complete 4 perilous trials. During this time, Eros began to forgive Psyche, and when she was about to complete the trials, she opened a box that Persephone had given her that was supposed to contain a bit of Persephone's beauty, and was greeted with the essence of death instead. Persephone screwed her. Eros went and saved Psyche. They got back together and moved to Olympus, where Psyche was made the goddess of the soul. They even had a kid.
Yeah.
please remember, this is just one version of how the story goes. There are many more different interpretations, so some people may be like, this isn't what I heard. Yeah, probably, because there's a bunch of them. Like, mythology is completely vast, and let's be honest, it's all technically made up told stories. Now, if Eros was a grown man getting married to beautiful women, where did the whole baby look come from? Some rumors claim that Cupid, the Romanized version, was born from a silver egg rather than a natural birth, but let's be honest, not many births in mythology are what us mortals would call natural.
Like, what was it? I can't remember if it was Kronos or Zeus being birthed out of his father's skull.
Out of the
top
head.
of the top of the head. Yeah.
Other theorists, such as the ancient poet Hesiod, something like that, Hesiod, who knows, wrote in his book of another reason that Cupid was depicted as a baby. The quote goes, Eros, Greek god of love, Cupid to the Romans, the son of Aphrodite. In Greek literature, his cruelty to his victims is emphasized. Also, his omnipotence. In the Christian era, Cupids became angelic beings symbolizing divine benevolence and compassion.
And what was it? Cherubs themselves were then kind of made for, what was it? I think it was one of the foreign, like almost like, I think it said Judaism. I cannot remember exactly what it said for which one it was, but one of them, cherub actually means like, what was it? To bless or the blessed or something like that.
Yeah,
or
I
like
read
to
that.
pray.
Yeah. I actually think I read that while I was doing research on all this. So you can find more in his book Theogony, which is still available to this day and has been translated and all that stuff. And it's like from 700 BCE. So that's pretty interesting. Now, did you notice that he mentions the words cruelty and victims in his poem of Cupid? Even then, Cupid wasn't a symbol of love and affection. It was purely made up by Christian mythology to accompany the Christian symbolization of cherubs being good and kind. So now we know how Cupid came to look like a chubby baby. But when did it become popular? When did he become a popular Valentine's Day mascot? Well, the answer to that is during the Victorian era. Valentine's Day started becoming super popular, and they started plastering the image of the cherub version of Cupid on Valentine's Day cards, and it just kind of snowballed from there. Pretty interesting, don't you think?
Very.
Although many portray the antics of Cupid's matchmaking as harmless, others see a maniacal trickster god who plays on the emotions of mortals and gods alike. Heck, there's even a story where he completely destroys Apollo's love life for being a jerk to him. So, the story behind this is that one day after a great victory of defeating Pythos, Apollo saw Cupid playing with his bow and arrows. Apollo, feeling mighty smug, told Cupid, and I quote, "What have you to do with warlike weapons, saucy boy? Leave them for hands worthy of them. Behold the conquest I have won by means of them over the vast serpent, who stretched his poisonous body over acres of the plain. Be content with your torch, child, and kindle up your flames, as you call them, where you will, but presume not to meddle with my weapons." This offended Cupid, Eros, greatly, to the point where he didn't care who he'd hurt as long as he'd hurt Apollo, and made sure he felt pain. So he shot his love arrow at Apollo, and shot a lead arrow at the very beautiful nymph named Daphne. She was the daughter of a river god. The lead arrow caused Daphne to hate the enamored Apollo, so that when he began to pursue her, she ran from him. He began to catch up to her, and she panicked. The last thing she wanted was to be with him. Even before she was shot with the lead arrow, she had told her father that she did not want to ever marry anybody. So it was even worse now. He was about to catch up when she asked her father, the river god, to do something to help her, to save her in any way necessary. So her father turned her into a laurel tree. That was his solution, turning her into a tree, so that Apollo could no longer pursue her to the ends of the earth, and she could rest, but ultimately not have to be, with someone she hated so much. But at the same time, she's a tree now.
Mm-hmm.
because Cupid was angry. This poor nymph turned into a tree. And then it got really creepy because Apollo was still kind of in love with her, and he felt really bad that she got turned into a tree because of all this. And he told her that he was going to use the leaves from her branches to go into war with them, and that's why they would wear, that's the story of why they would wear the laurels.
The laurel around their tree,
yeah.
around their head. Yeah.
So that's the story of that. Yeah, Cupid did that. He legit made Apollo fall in love with the nymph and made her hate him because he was feeling bad. So that's something I think is kind of interesting about mythology, though, is the kind of depressing way that they explain how things have origins and backgrounds.
Yeah, definitely. And it would be very interesting if people like this one enough that they want us to do any more of them, because there are some other ones that I would love to get into. And one of them, I think that around St. Paddy's Day, I would love to do the story of Cuchulainn.
Ooh.
Because that kind of has like a mystical aspect to it as well, because he actually hulks out. He was one of the first folk people to actually have a twisted, demented transformation of his body because of things. So I would love to go through that as well.
Yeah. Sounds great to me. If you guys are interested, let us know. So this isn't the only instance of Cupid using his power to hurt others for his own personal power trip. In comes the story of Narcissus. Yeah. If that name sounds familiar, yeah, it sounds like the word narcissistic, and you're gonna find out why. So,
well, it's like the Hercules movie, the Disney movie and everything, when he said that I haven't seen as much love in the room since Narcissus has discovered himself. And the guy's in the mirror.
Yeah. I spaced on that. I didn't catch it at the time. All right, so Narcissus was the most beautiful man in the land, and boy, did he know it. He rejected women left and right in a very cruel and mocking fashion because he thought himself untouchable by Cupid's arrows. Then one day, Echo, a mountain nymph, found herself falling in love with him, and in turn, he teased and laughed at her, boasting that his beauty was so grand it could make a nymph fall for him. This angered Cupid, but what really set him off was being underestimated by the pretty boy, so he decided to shoot his arrows at the nymph Echo and the jerk Narcissus to make them fall in love. He didn't do the whole lead arrow or whatever. He was like, you know what, I'm going to make you fall in love. This is fine. Unfortunately, Narcissus had been sitting by a lake at the time that the arrow was being shot at him, so the first thing he saw and fell in love with was his reflection. He quickly tried to embrace his reflection and, as a result, fell into the lake and drowned.
That's also a little bit of a reference from the Disney movie as well, when he when he discovered himself. Yeah.
That's so funny. We gotta watch that again.
Yeah.
So, absolutely terrifying, isn't it? Someone that should look like a precious winged baby killing others. And it's funny because when you read these stories and you remember that he was a very tall Greek god man, that's what it looked like. But Renaissance paintings literally depict a fat little baby chasing these gods. It's so creepy. Definitely not very cherub-like, right? Well, that's where you'd be wrong. Cherubs aren't cute, innocent, or baby-like at all. The cherubs that Cupid is depicted as don't even truly exist in that form. The cherubim, which is their plural term, were first introduced in the Bible in the Genesis 3:24 as protectors of the Garden of Eden after the Christian God kicks out Adam and Eve. After he drove the man out, this is a quote from the Bible, by the way. After he drove the man out, he placed on the east side of the Garden of Eden cherubim and a flaming sword flashing back and forth to guard the way to the tree of life.
Yep. That's why the flaming sword was always a symbol of vengeance and wrath and things because of that.
I didn't know that. Cherubs were more like bodyguards, warriors, messengers, throne bearers, pretty much all of that. And they were second in the hierarchy of roles of servitude to the Christian God. Fun fact, Lucifer was actually a cherub before he got all Satan-y. And that you can find that in Ezekiel 28:12-15. Their appearance is even more unsettling, as in the Genesis, Kings, and Revelation versions of the Bible, they are described as having 4 faces: an ox, a lion, a man, and eagle. Although the Ezekiel version replaces the ox with the face of a cherub, which, I don't know, like, what's the difference? You got like a little fat face and then a big face?
It depends, because it could also mean is that they have because it's also talking about the cherub in general. So, like, do you have the same face as the 3 that you already have, just another version? But it also goes on the lines of, like, the actual depiction of angels where their faces are constantly shifting. That could also mean that as well.
That's a thing.
Yeah, you didn't know that? We gotta look up that.
Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Gotta move the microphone a little bit. Sorry for the noise. So angels' faces are depicted as the ox, lion, man, eagle, stuff like that. But it's also all of them at once and constantly shifting. They're the most terrifying looking things. The face will change every, like, what it says, like, every couple seconds or something like that. But it's like this weird warp, like, looking directly at them is crazy.
Oh, yeah. Oh. Along with these multiple faces, they also have 4 wings and 2 wheels. Interestingly enough, the wheel within a wheel system that is attached to them is actually what moves them, not the wings. And boy, do they move! They have been described to have supernaturally fast movement. So, did you know about the whole wheel moving system?
Kind of, but not in the way that you had just explained it. I heard something about it, but then there wasn't really much detail that I had seen.
I thought it was really weird, because first of all, how did they come up with that? Like, why would you not just say it flies? Why did it need wheels? It's got 4 wings! Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Christian Satan Lucifer himself was once a cherub, so obviously that must mean that cherubs are capable of their own thoughts and feelings. Enough so that when Lucifer began to admire his own beauty, power, and intelligence, that he likened himself to God. This angered the Christian God and is what caused him to cast Lucifer from heaven to the earth. Then when the whole Adam and Eve fiasco happened, because of that, it was some kind of crazy rocky slide down. I find this both interesting and absolutely terrifying when you remember how these beings are portrayed. They literally exist only to serve and glorify the Christian God, even to the point of constantly holding up his throne, like, for all of time. That's all they're able to do, is be there. And then you start thinking about how he started having his own feelings and thoughts. How many more must feel this way? For example, Archangel Gabriel, Archangel Raphael, and Guardian Angel Rick Beal?
Yeah, I think.
They were all also cherubs before becoming archangels and guardian angels, and that their depictions of looking like men with the wings are all Renaissance romanticized versions that people created. In ancient Mesopotamia, cherubs were actually portrayed as terrifying beings created to instill fear in mortals. These versions of cherubs wore helmets, like war helmets, to show that they were not to be trifled with. Have you ever heard about that?
Yes, that one I have.
Really?
I've because knowing the differences between, like, cherubs as what people have described them as now, and then the ones that they're actually depicted as back then, I remember hearing bits and pieces and seeing little depictions of the ones with, like, helmets on and stuff like that. That there was kind of like it seemed like they were warlike.
Really? I'd never seen or heard anything about that.
It's definitely interesting.
So what did you think of today's episode?
I didn't know a lot of this stuff. It was very interesting to hear about it, and just kind of diving little bits here and there into religious things as well. It's nice to be able to see where some of the things are and how they're all kind of interwoven a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. And after learning a bit more about the true nature of Cupid and Cherubs, I definitely feel like the art of the Renaissance era really misled us in our perception of these beings. It really affected the way people modernly think about them.
And we still don't really know why they started depicting them as babies, though. It just says, like, it was during the Victorian era, but it never says, like, why? Why in the hell would you think this?
Some people from the theories I was reading here and there, I didn't really add them in because they weren't, like, let's be honest, I was going to say factual, but all of this is, like, mythology and all that. But a lot of theorists say that it, during the Christian movement of trying to get people to like the religion more when it was first starting out.
Oh, have little, like, oh, you can almost think of it like a nice way
like
of...
a mascot.
Yeah, kind of, I was going to say propaganda, because it's kind of like, you know, like... Not really, but in a nice way. It's like you have to kind of like make it easier and
To like.
yeah, make it a little bit more comfortable for people to like. I can see that a little bit, but it's just weird. I personally think that babies are more terrifying than anything described as the old time of cherubs. So,
but you have to think of it this way: these people were living in a time where they think of like a creature that has wings and wheels sticking out of it and multiple heads. They probably thought that would be a demon.
right.
If they were if someone described that to them. It's like, hey, join my new religion. It's got this one cherub we've got has 4 heads and there are different animals and it's got goat legs and wings and it goes really, really fast and it screams at you if you do something wrong.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's hilarious though.
So you could just imagine how that would turn people away, I guess. If they were, I guess, I don't know, upfront with the situation or what they could find in the book. It's been really interesting to find out all of this. I can't wait to learn more. I'm not sure how I feel about cherubs and or Cupid anymore after learning everything, but what I do know for sure is that they are welcome down here with us below the forest floor. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast, and thank you to our #1 supporter on Patreon, Lotus Vincent. If you would like to help support us in our journey of exploring the supernatural, make sure you check us out on patreon.com/belowtheforestfloor. Any tier, $1 and up, will get a shout out at the end of each episode of Below the Forest Floor, along with exclusive content. Like today, I uploaded this entire script and all of the information and research that I did on the Patreon website, where you guys can go and check it out and become forest deities, which is like the highest tier. And also, if you love gaming or you want to say hi to us live, we have a Twitch channel called Esterluna Metriel on Twitch, where we try to stream as often as possible. Speaking of which, we are now Twitch affiliates!
Yay!
If you would like to hop in and give us a follow or just say hi, we would greatly appreciate it. Have a great night, an awesome Valentine's Day, and we'll see you next time. Bye!
Bye!